You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. By going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, you can make this possible.
I want to talk about this weird story out of Louisiana where the United States Fifth Court of Appeals, well, the Fifth Circuit, ruled, they actually withdrew an opinion it made in April, reinstating a lawsuit against Black Lives Matter organizer DeRay Mckesson. They ruled that he did not have in any First Amendment rights. Now, here's what happened. A district judge ruled in 2017 that Black Lives Matter is not a particular entity of any sort, and like the Tea Party or Civil Rights Movement, can't be sued. According to this story, the judge also concluded that Mckesson solely engaged in protected speech at a demonstration. Well, a law officer claims that Mckesson is the reason why he suffered injuries, serious injuries, during a protest in 2016 after the shooting death of Alton Sterling. We initially had DeRay booked for the show, then he canceled. Hopefully we will rehab him on the show to get his thoughts on this lawsuit. Joseph, I want to start with you. It's sort of strange, again, that this officer is trying to sue one individual who was participating in a protest as if that person is over all the actions of all the protesters.
He's the king of black protesters, you know, so that's why they got to take him out. I mean, look, it's very simple what's happening here, right? You've got a representative, a guy who's fairly well known in DeRay Mckesson, who is going to be the villain, right? You talked in the last segment about how Tlaib and Omar and AOC are all villains of Donald Trump and foils. This is just another play from that handbook, right? He's trying to sue DeRay Mckesson to basically silence him. What I find interesting, two things are, the first is protected speech has been like a catch-all tool that the conservatives have been using for years to try to protect stuff like gun rights and abortion and so forth, to try to get those issues on their side by using the First Amendment. Now comes a time where somebody's using the First Amendment to go against what they stand for, and all of a sudden he's the bad guy, right? I mean, the second thing that occurs to me is the Fifth Circuit in Louisiana is probably one of the most conservative courts in the nation, one of the most conservative circuits. And I looked it up before I came on the show. Of the 16 judges that are sitting right now, 5 were appointed by Donald Trump. 5. And before that, the ones that were appointed by President Obama in 8 years, 2. 5 versus 2. Mostly conservative, pushing far to the right past any of the other conservatives that sit there. So this is probably what I think a sign of things to come, in the fact that Trump keeps pushing these judges, Mr. McConnell keeps putting them on the court, and we're going to keep getting nonsensical rulings like this one.
Here's what's interesting. First of all, the lawsuit says when the defendants ran out of water bottles they were throwing at the Baton Rouge City Police, a member of defendant Black Lives Matter, he's saying that a member of Mckesson's group, Black Lives Matter, which he's actually not over, under the control and custody of the defendants, then picked up a piece of concrete or similar rock-like substance and hurled into the police that were making arrests. They said the officer was knocked to the ground, that some of his teeth were knocked out, and had an injury to his jaw and his brain. Now, here's what's interesting here. In this opinion, Erica and Eton, it says, we of course acknowledge that Mckesson's negligent conduct took place in the context of a political protest. But Claiborne Hardware does not insulate the petitioner from liability for his own negligent conduct simply because he and those he associated with also intended to communicate a message. I don't know where, but are they saying that DeRay was throwing rocks, was throwing water? To have judges say he had negligent conduct, like what?
Yeah, I really believe that this is really another way to dissuade people from really pushing back and standing up and peacefully boycotting, or just boycotting, period, which is protected by the First Amendment. Particularly as we look at, you know, the 2019 coming up on the 2020 cycle, this is about people being engaged. It goes from local to state to federal. This is about people saying that we are the ones that are taxpayers. We pay these elected officials. We also pay the police officers who are directed to protect and serve us. So I think that also it is, and you mentioned this, time kind of to play connect the dots. All of the conversations that have been had on this show around the courts, around the number of federal judges that Donald Trump is nominating, and then that McConnell is making sure sweeps through the Senate fairly quickly, are reasons around why we boycott, are reasons around why we protest, are reasons around why we participate in voter rights advocacy, because all of these things add up to the body politic that we're all involved now. So I think it's most important that, number one, as Joseph pointed out, the number of judges that are on that bench, as far as that Fifth Circuit Court, that people pay attention to that and use these things as motivation to be engaged in your local communities.
But Eton, this is why I continue to try to explain to people, by connecting the dots, why you have to understand voting in this election is tied to federal judges being appointed. Because when you have judges who will make such rulings that then will have an impact on protest, what they're saying is any individual can be sued by a cop if they are engaged in a protest, which will have a chilling effect on anybody who goes out and protests and then says, oh, well, you were in a group, these folks over here threw something, you're responsible for their actions, when in fact, you're not.
Right, and the way this ties into the first topic that we talked about is that they're doing this to kind of squash anybody from protesting or demonstrating in any way, shape, or form. The same way the NFL is whiteballing Kaepernick to try to, dissuade any players from taking a knee or protesting in any way, shape, or form. And it's always interesting when they use language that we're going to try to create a safe environment for players to use their voices, and they don't ever do it. You know what I mean? As long as it's not protesting, as long as it's not taking a knee, as long as it's not this, or this, you're safe to do it.
But a safe environment in the NFL is kind of a joke, right?
Right.
The sport is built on mayhem, and you're trying to create a safe environment for a peaceful protest that offends people, that offends the league, that offends white viewers, that offends people who don't even know what they're protesting about.
Yeah, and don't forget that, the same thing they told Dr. King, that it wasn't the right time for him to protest, or it wasn't the right way for him to protest. But now, you'll hear all the mainstream America talk about how much they love Dr. King. On the Martin Luther King Day, they'll tweet, they'll make their, signs, they'll tweet their quotes and everything like that. But then they look at Colin Kaepernick, they say, no, he shouldn't be allowed to protest, and he should be punished. And they'll almost have a victory lap for him not being in the NFL. And that's the hypocritical part. But I do want to say one thing real quick before I stop, and you referred to it earlier. I too would like to hear from Colin Kaepernick himself. I would. You know what I mean? There's a large amount of people, my son included, his teammates included, that are like, first, should we watch the NFL again? First we heard that, he had this settlement, and so, okay, he got a settlement, so he got his back pay from the whole time that they were whiteballing him, so everything should be okay, right? But then we heard a little bit after that, he's working out and he wants to get back in the league. And then we hear Jay-Z, partnering with the NFL, and we hear a negative reaction from everybody around Kaepernick, from his girlfriend Nessa, from, Eric Reed, who we know how close he is with him.
Got it.
And all
I got it.
Go ahead.
Just give me 1 second. First off, I want to go back to the DeRay story. And here's the deal, folks. This is an important case. Those of us in media, we understand this. It's called New York Times versus Sullivan. That was a landmark Supreme Court case where the Supreme Court ruled that a city could not sue protesters for defaming them. Dr. King and others took a full-page ad out in the New York Times in 1960, blasting Alabama for its racism, criticizing the Montgomery Police Department. What happened was an actual commissioner sued, saying that they were defamed. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court. They tried to in fact, the initial ruling was that a judge ruled in favor of Montgomery, Alabama officials, and they were awarded $500,000. This case went all the way up to the Supreme Court after the New York Times appealed the case. And had this case not been ruled this way by those Supreme Court justices, that means that anybody who criticized public officials for Jim Crow could have sued media entities and sued civil rights activists as a result of them calling out racism. And so again, I want people to understand why judges matter. Had the Supreme Court not made that decision, then all of these Jim Crow city folks, county folks could have sued activists for daring to criticize Jim Crow. And so I just want folks just to understand that. So you understand why judges matter. Go ahead, Joe.
And just real quickly, I mean, will this Supreme Court make a decision like that? Will this Supreme Court stand up for freedom of speech, stand up for Times versus Sullivan, and hold it as precedent? I have my doubts.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, you've heard me talk a lot about marijuanastock.org. Why? Because I want to keep you informed of investment opportunities that make sense. We've all watched the growth of the cannabis industry. A recent report by New Frontier Data estimates the global cannabis market at over $340 billion. Now, we know that marijuana legalization is sweeping the country state by state. We also know that marijuana has a good cousin, the hemp plant, which with a much higher concentration of CBD. That means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Now, until recently, hemp farming was practically illegal in the U.S. and heavily regulated by the DEA. However, the 2018 Farm Bill changed all of that, making it legal to grow hemp CBD in the U.S. and creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. They need land to grow all of the plants. And folks, this isn't rocket science. It's an incredible investment opportunity. And that's where our good friends at 420 Real Estate come in. Their business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. The folks at 420 Real Estate decided to do something special for Roland Martin Unfiltered family. Originally, the minimum investment level was $500. Right now, you can invest in this crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200. That's right, $200 up to $10,000. Now, let me recap. This is a $340 billion worldwide industry, and it's growing. You can participate with as little as $200. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. Get in the game and get in the game now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.